I think, almost everything that I was going to do. The thing that I did change is because it's not going to be too visible simply because we're using that matching thread. As I was originally going to do was go into the flying geese necks, but very quickly what I'm going to do is switch gears first. Okay, so now I'm going to just real quick, so I don't forget, I'm going to go right onto those blue lines that I made. Actually, not lines, just little dots, and get rid of them. And like I said earlier, normally when I'm working with something on color, I'm going to be using the white bow and chalk. But with this, it was a little too hard to see, and I wanted to make sure you could see it. And I know that I'm not near anything that's going to bleed. So I know that that's going to come right out, and I'm not going to have any issue. Had I have done lines, I would have stuck to my white chalk. So that's all. Those are gone. They are not pushed down into the batting where they would come back. They're actually gone. The blue line eraser has done its job. So now we're going to go ahead. I'm going to go here and I'm going to start to ditch across here. Now the one thing that I'm going to do, you can't really tell, but these are done in sections. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. For every 4 flying geese, it's actually a block right here that's been pieced. So what I'm going to do is I ditch across, is I'll go a little bit further than where the seam is, come back, up, down, over, a little bit past the seam, back, up, down. And I'm going to do that so that over time we're not going to get any distortion here. I want that to be nice and stable because it is a little bit wider. And because it's next to a sash that doesn't have any quilting in it, it could distort over time in many washes if I didn't do that. Went a little past, come back, line up my ruler, up, down, continue over. Go a little past, come back, line up the ruler, up, down, continue across. Let me move some of my shrapnel out of the way here. I do have a tendency to load my quilt top with stuff and things. Back, up, down, over. Now I'm going to repeat this exact same thing on the bottom portion after I finish this. So it's going to be an exact repeat. It's just going to be done on the lower leaf sash. Okay, now let me take a moment here and um, say something here. So, a temptation for a lot of you would be, well, how come you don't just travel now down the side of the ditch and head back without cutting thread and then down and up, back, down and up? The reason that I don't want to do that, even though my machine is capable of that, I am using a trilobal type thread. And so what's going to happen because of the wind on the thread, and some of you, this happens and you think there's something going on with your machine. So that's why I'm mentioning it. Once I come down and head back, as I move my machine from left to right, the trilobal wind is working perfect. But the minute I start to go long distances this way, what's going to happen is the actual thread here, we'll get that on the B-roll, is going to start to unwind. And so what'll happen then, of course, are the strands that are stranded together are going to start to unwind, and then the hook could catch on it, and you're going to start to get some shredding. And that has nothing to do with timing. That has more to do with using like a trilobal polyester thread, and some of the cottons will do that as well. So I prefer, when I'm doing my ditch work across, to lock my stitches, go back to the other side, and head from left to right again. And now I'm going to pop down, and we're going to go ahead and we're going to ditch that, and then I'm going to move back up into here, and we're going to do what work we're going to do with our flying geese. Okay, so what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to come down the side, since I'm already locked on, and I'm simply going to come down as far as I can go, and then I am going to go over on that seam, come back up, go over, and go ahead and do this stitching down on this side. I'm going to come down that side border, and I'm actually going to go past the seam. I'm going to come down as far as I can go, which is right there. Now I'm going to head back, go to my seam, over, come down. Now I'm going to head back up, I'm going to stay right in that ditch. Now I'm going to come down that side. Come up, head over, just gonna lock my stitches. Okay, I'm good there. So now I have that top section done. I am going to repeat that over on the other side, and then I'm going to be ready to go into my flying geese. Now, what I was originally going to do was go into the flying geese next, but very quickly what I'm going to do is switch gears for a second because I want to go ahead, since I have the correct thread color for these dark leaves, and this flange is the same color. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to ditch the outside of this flange, and of course I'm going to air to the flange itself, the brown. And when I say flange, it's because this is dimensional, it flips up and down, and rather than of course pin it back and ditch underneath, I would rather ditch on the outside here. So I'm going to start here, I'm going to ditch up, and then I'm going to go ahead and then I'm going to ditch all the way over to the left and down, and then we'll move into the geese. So I've locked my stitches on the outside of the flange here on the edge. Line up my ditch ruler. And again, for anybody that's forgotten, I am at 12 stitches per inch. Go right up to the corner, stop, pivot, line it up, make sure I don't have any distortion. When I say I want to make sure I don't have any distortion, I'm not sliding my ruler and pushing fullness up into here. I want to make sure when I go to a corner and I stop and pivot that I lift my ditcher and I smooth things so that I can get as straight of a line as the piecing will allow, based on how the piecer pieced it. Again, the one thing that we want to remember as surface quilters, whether we piece for ourselves or quilt for ourselves or quilt for others, is we are surface quilters. We're not magicians. We work with what we have, and you do the best with what you have. And a lot of surface quilters that do client quilts have a tendency to think that they are supposed to deal with issues that are within the quilt or pieced within the quilt. You can deal with those issues, but you are not going to change those issues. The mythology that it'll quilt out is actually the opposite. Everything quilts in. The only thing that I have found that I can pretty much guarantee to work out with a quilt would be fullness. I can always remove fullness using the spray starch method. Okay, and now I'm going to work my way down this edge. Okay, lock my stitches. Now let's go get those geese. Okay, so we're going to be starting here. Now we've already ditched between the geese themselves, so this is done. We are going to be retraveling opposite sides on the way up. Again, double ditching is not an issue whatsoever. Now I'm going to end up locking my stitches over here. I'm going to head over the bottom of the goose, up the side, down the side, and then up the edge. Over the bottom, up the side, down the side, up the edge. Over the bottom, up, down, over, across the bottom, up, down, up, down. And then of course come up, lock my stitches, and I could go ahead and travel the ditch up and just continue working my way across here. Now, I've decided with this particular quilt to go ahead and do straight ditch work. I could have instead gone in here and done a continuous curve alternative. But what I realized for myself was that there's already so much straight line ruler work in this particular piece that I kind of want to stick with that formality. I want to stick with that that look of more formalness to the quilting and simply using the ruler work itself. And then the only place that I'm really going to have any type of something a little bit different will be when the next section, which we go in here, and I'm going to go in 1/2 of an inch, go in 1/2 of an inch, and then I'm going to fill this with a little bit of a sash design. And then of course we did have our cornerstones that we started with on the border, which has that goose body, goose neck design of the continuous curve alternative. So those are just a few of the places that I'm actually going to put something other than straight line work. All right, so let's get this quilted. Okay, so now we're going to go across the bottom, stop, pivot. I'm going to go up the side, stop, pivot, come down the other side. And with this one, I am trying to stay right as close in that ditch as I can possibly be. Now we're going to come up that side and repeat. And we're going to just keep repeating that same pattern all the way up. Come across the bottom, stop, pivot, come up the side, stop, pivot, come down the side, stop, up the side, now I'm using a mini ditcher here just because of the shorter runs with these small flying geese. That just keeps me in a lot more control than using something big like this or even one of the regular ditchers. And then the other option that I like to use would be my little 4-inch square. Up, pivot, across, stop, pivot, up, stop. There's going to be less wrist twisting. So if you are a carpal tunnel person like myself, you will find that the square on bad days will be the one you will want to go with. Up, stop, pivot, up, down, and now I am simply going to follow that ditch because it's not that far to go. And now I can go ahead and I can repeat that process here. So up, stop, pivot, line it up, ditch, down. And we're going to do this all the way over and down the other side. And then we will move into this section right here, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to handle this, just to add a little bit of contrast to the quilting we've already put in.